Welcome to the HU Movemakers podcast, where we highlight folks that are blazing the trail and making moves in Howard culture. Today we have a very, very special guest. Very special guest in Black history. Very special guest in Howard history. She has her master's from Howard. Did doctoral studies at Howard. Bachelor's from Central State. Harvard lecturer, Oxford lecturer. Military chaplain, educator, servant leader, head of faith and family ministries at Sanctuary at Mount Calvary Church. All the way from Youngstown, Ohio, ladies and gentlemen, Omarosa Manigault Newman. Well, Miss Omarosa, thank you for coming to the show. I really appreciate it.
I heard about a show called...
That's what I want to talk about, The Apprentice. This is when you officially become a household name. You become Omarosa. Can't nobody call you Omarosa. They're going to call you Omarosa. From this point on, you checking everybody. So
I don't really trip about how people say my name anymore, as long as they spell my name right on my check. Like
facts.
Before, when I was younger, I used to worry about if they pronounced it right. Now I'm like, is it spelled right in the pay to the order of section of the check?
True. What was it like being on that show? I mean, and you were alpha female personality too. What was that like?
So much of that was HBCU swag. Like, if you think about it, when you're at Howard, they tell you that you are the leader in the global community, that you are to go into a situation and focus on leadership, not followership. You're like, all that stuff that they drill in your head at Howard. I walked into the boardroom and was like, I'm the leader. I am not inferior to anyone. I am exceptional. Like,
did you really believe it at the time, or were you like playing up to it?
I mean, I believed it because it was true. Howard Central HBCU experience arms you with all the things that you need to go into those situations and to excel. Now, my swag might have been turned way too high because if I look back on the Omarosa of 2003, I was just, I felt like I was unstoppable, that I was going to take over the world. And that's
we know she's not getting kicked off. She gonna at least make it to, like you was for a lot of them episodes. You was a superstar on that show, so you were kind of carrying a lot of that, a lot of what that show did for NBC and especially for Donald Trump, because at that time, Donald Trump ain't have anything going on other than The Apprentice. He just had, he had his reputation in real estate, but as I learned more about Donald Trump, he wasn't really developing buildings. It was like a down period for him. So he kind of put his name on that and he kind of blew up.
Yeah, it was a lot of branding going on. And we all know that it was an illusion. Mm-hmm. The Trump brand was an illusion. When I did the application was like, this is the job opportunity of a lifetime. And this is your chance. And so when I went through the process, they told me there were like 200, 300,000 people who applied, but never in that process did I not think I was going to get on. And I know
really,
I was like,
what were some of the things that they did to weed people out, or like the scenarios they put you in?
They would put you in a group situation. So there would be 10 people at the table and they give you these what if scenarios. They would be like, what if you're in the boardroom and somebody challenges you? I'm like, to a debate? Like a debate with me? I would destroy them. I'm saying that kind of stuff in interviews.
Oh, really? So they were like, yeah, we have to have her.
Right. They were like, you would destroy them? Like what? I'm like, I would just read them for filth, and it worked. I got on the show. So
that experience, as we know, it became a huge, huge deal. That show was a huge deal. Number one show on NBC, number one show for that time slot. Killing it. Helped Donald Trump revive his status. Helped a lot of people, to be quite honest. I know that on the show you came in 8th place overall, right? Am I getting that right?
I was 9th.
9th? Okay.
Wait. Season 1, the first time I was on the show, 8th. second time, ninth, third time, eighth, ninth. I can't really remember.
So when you're on the show, did you feel like in these situations when you're like up front like that, do you feel like you have a responsibility for the culture to represent, or like what's going through your head at that moment? Because I want to say when you're on the show, were you the only black woman, and it was the other guy, Kwame. Was he
I
the
was
only?
a black woman, and they reminded me that I was the only black woman because whenever they were shooting, they're like, "We need special lighting for Omarosa." It's like,
Damn.
oh, okay, bring in my lighting. Yeah, we need to light her. I was always cognizant that I was the only black woman, but in terms of for the culture, at the time, like I said, the 27-year-old Omarosa thought being strong and bold and negotiating deals and winning, I thought that was what it meant to represent. And, now I've had plenty of time. What has it been? 17, 18 years. I've had enough time to look back and realize that people weren't looking at it as a game show like I was. They were looking to be inspired. And I don't know that, you should look at Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy to be inspired because it's a game. And that's how I was looking at The Apprentice. There would only be one winner. People were eliminated. And so I now recognize that what people were looking for, if I wanted to win, I couldn't give it to them because the game required you to be cunning and cutthroat and backstabbing, and the people who made it to the final three were just they were clever, and they threw people under the bus, and they did whatever they had to do to win. And so if people were looking to be inspired as opposed to recognizing, like you said you did with your students, the business lessons that were in the show, then people walked away with two different things.
So what about being on that show and you basically you become a celebrity, not just in the black community, but just period. And with that celebrity comes you become a villain, basically. What did that feel like to not only be a villain, but I mean you being hated on by black folks too,
I don't realize the character that the team that I was working with and we were trying to build.
Mm-hmm.
I did not go on the show to be seen as the girl next door or an angel. I'll tell you that straight up. I was a little surprised by the villain mantra, but I was also willing to take what came with that because I knew that so much of what was baked into the villain idea was people's fear of strong black women. This first time on television that you see a black woman that's not sitting up there being the best friend or, the cleaning lady or accommodating. I didn't accommodate anybody in the boardroom. I was taking them out left and right. And for some people, that was the first time they saw a character type like me, and confident, educated, experienced, connected politically, and all of that. And so people who love strong black women loved me. People who were intimidated by an outspoken, brass, bold, sassy black woman, oh my gosh, they were like, did you see what she said to him? Like, she called him out. She made fun of his hair. I made fun of Donald Trump's hair once, and that became a headline. But I was not going to pass up an opportunity that, as we now know, was going to change my life. The other thing is, I had worked in politics all those years. So I had developed thick skin. And so when people were like, you're a villain, and I came up with this mantra, good girls go to heaven and bad girls go everywhere. And so, and it was true because after that, my television career kind of took off, kind of advancing that whole, bad girl, bold, outspoken kind of personality. Now I see people copying that, obviously, now, years later, and thousands of reality shows later, there's always an Omarosa on the show. But at the time, there was no one who had come before me in that space.
Yeah, I remember, I want to say like watching Nene Leakes on that show. I mean, and what she did to Star Jones, that was ugly. But anyway, I just thought I would bring that up. But so reading about this, Trump on the show, obviously he's running our country now. Is rumored, allegedly, that he's really comfortable using the N-word.
Well, because I'm in litigation right now with him about said issue, I have 2 lawsuits, which people don't realize, with Donald Trump. Donald Trump has gone to arbitration to silence me in terms of saying that I can't defame him or say negative things about him. And so I have been in that process for almost 2 years.
But that's like part of his strategy anyway. I read up on him, and that's what he's done throughout his career is
sue people.
Take people through court, sue them, humiliate them until they run out of money or until they just can't take it anymore.
Yes, and so he's tried to do that strategy, but he's losing, and so as a result, so far his attorneys have had to pay the arbitrators fees to the tune of about $100,000. Of course, I have to pay my lawyers, but not to get too deep in it. Then they filed a second lawsuit against me, which you can look up, which is the United States versus Omarosa Manigault Newman for some random ethics violation that they claim that I did. They're also losing.
Was that over the NDA thing?
No, this one was over delaying in filing my final financial disclosure form, which they pre-populated with wrong information. So not to get into it, but I said, once you all correct it, since it's pre-populated and I can't change it, then I'll file it. So 2 lawsuits, that's his MO. But I have to be very careful about certain issues, and that's one of them. But I am not the only one to make those assertions. Thank God there are finally people coming out to speak and talk about.
I want to hear the tapes. Get the people what they want. We want to hear the tapes.
Timing is everything, my friend.
Man, you got to at least leave it in your will or something. Something. Play it to a eulogy. I want to something like something. But yeah, that's that was an experience. So what did it feel like when you so that show ends and you get kind of the boot or whatever fired? Did you have something lined up next? Okay, smart woman. Of course you did. You're not falling for the Al Gore okie doke.
What's so funny is the network, NBC, now at that point, because the show is such a big hit, it's the #1 show on the network. And NBC lawyers sit you down. They're like, Omarosa, we're going to put you in a development deal. And gosh, if I had known back then what development means. Development deal means they give you a whole bunch of money, like $500,000. And they're going to develop a project for you. But it also means you can't go do anything else with any other network. And so I had a great agent, by the way, and I signed this incredible development deal with NBC to develop a talk show and other projects. And it was good for a while until the merger happened, NBC Universal merger happened. They fired all of my people, all the folks that were working on that deal. I got the check, but I didn't get the show.
Well, that's not bad.
It's not bad because I was able to move to LA. My agency was incredible, and I booked 7 other shows after that. And since then, I've done 100 different television reality type shows, game shows, talk show, that kind of stuff. But at the time, it was incredible because I thought I was making the right moves, and I thought that it was going to lead me to be the next Oprah. But my show didn't get picked up. And it was one of those things where you learn very early on in entertainment that, you can tape 1 million shows. And trust me, I've probably taped about 500 pilots. And it's difficult to get and to stay on television. So I learned that in those early years in my show business career.
Wow. So you did 100 shows. What were some of the shows that you did after? What were some of the things you did after the Apprentice?
I did a really fun show called Surreal Life. That was like one of my first major shows. I don't know if you remember. They had all these celebrities live in a house.
Oh, okay.
I was on with Peppa from Salt and Pepper, Jose Canseco, Janice Dickinson. Like it was a crazy successful show back. I mean, this is back in the day.
So what type of money is coming in with with these reality shows? Like
At that point, my fee is $150,000 for 2 weeks of work.
for 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
How do you come to this number? Where does that number come from?
Came to that number because at that point I had
Who came to it?
my agency.
Wow. So when they say Omarosa, we think we can do about a 150. Are you like, yeah, right? Like what are you thinking at that time?
No, my agent asked for 300,000, and then I would end up around $175,000 for these shows. And again, that was like a changing point for me because I understood my worth. I understood what ratings were to the industry, and I understood that I was a big ratings getter. And so once you learn your value, then you can make moves in entertainment. I also did soap operas around this time.
Oh.
I did some sitcoms. I did Girlfriends with Tracy Ellis Ross.
Oh, cool. So at this time is the goal to, so you're basically trying to establish a brand so you can be the next Oprah. So it's not politics at this point.
No, at that point I was completely immersed in entertainment, and I was still trying to get that talk show on television, working with different production companies. At this point, I'm doing movies as well. I did a couple of movies, which I don't want you to look up because, they were struggle movies. But it was fun. It was a fun time to be in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm. So fast forward to what Trump is running for president, and he taps you to be on his team.
Well, if you fast forward too fast, you miss that 6 years later, the network decides to do a celebrity version of The Apprentice.
Right, yeah. I saw that when I was looking on Wikipedia. So they do the celebrity version. So that's funny. Now you're like a celebrity and you kind of mastered the art of ratings. You're an excellent communicator already. So tell me about that. What's the goal now that you're on The Apprentice? Are you still able to demand that rate?
Yeah, my rate was significant for Celebrity Apprentice.
Wow.
Because again, at this point, I have a relationship with the network. NBC loves me. I'm their darling because of the ratings. And so my fee was nice. And then I go into, instead of a development deal with NBC this time around, I went into a development deal with Trump Productions.
I heard he be bouncing checks, though. You got to be careful.
Well, he developed a show for me called The Ultimate Merger that was on TV One. That was a nice check. At this point, we're 10 years into a working relationship.
Okay, so that's kind of how you develop a relationship with the Donald at that time. Okay.
I did 3 seasons of The Apprentice. Fast forward, it's 2015.
So what is it like behind the scenes working with somebody like Donald Trump? Is he somebody at this time, are you saying to yourself, man, this guy could be president? Like what's your impression at this time?
Well, because I went into pitch meetings with him, we're pitching shows and we're trying to get things off the ground. I knew what kind of salesman he was, like a slick snakes oil salesman, a used car salesman. Like he could sell anything. He was in there saying things that wasn't even on the pitch. He would be in there going, this is the greatest show. It's going to make the biggest ratings. And I've got this and that. And I'd be like, we do. I would literally look at him and be like, we do. I just learned that he would say whatever he needed to say to get the deal done. So behind the scenes, I got to see the art of the deal Trump, where he was just this master of manipulating a deal to his advantage. And so that's how we kind of got our show on air. And that was 2013. Fast forward, we're still pitching shows. 2014, 2015. He tells me he's going to run for president, and he says.
So are you guys friends at this point, or business? So okay.
At that point, The Apprentice is a major franchise.
So yeah, everything's good when everybody's making money.
Everything's good, There were board games, video games, slot machines, cruises. Carnival Cruise did an Apprentice cruise line. There were lecture series. I mean, there was a whole franchise for 10 years, 14 seasons of The Apprentice. Mm-hmm. I mean, anytime there was something apprentice related, NBC would book me to do an appearance related to The Apprentice, even if I wasn't on that season, because I was kind of their franchise go-to talent.
And at this point, you can't even walk around. You're like a household name. Everybody knows who you are. You can't even walk around, right?
Yeah, that was that was a period where.
How was it going back to Youngstown or going back to Central State at this moment in your life?
Well, Youngstown, it was great because I always wanted to be able to take care of my family and to kind of give back to my church, to my pastor, to my family, to, you know, people. It was nice that when people called me and they needed something, that I was able to help them. I mean, that was incredible. And my family was incredibly proud of me because nobody ever come out of Youngstown and made the kind of moves that I made or made the kind of impact. And in terms of Central, it was wonderful. I got inducted into the Hall of Fame, and I was
nice.
back, and I was able to help in that way raise the profile of the university and help recruit. It was just great.
Wow, man, come full circle. So so Trump says he's going to run for the office of president, and even before that, Obama is president, obviously, and one thing I did notice, and I don't know if this is the truth or not, when Obama captured or got, what's his name, Osama bin Laden killed, I noticed that they made the announcement right in the middle of The Apprentice. I remember that.
How do you remember that? That is so crazy.
Was that intentional, do you think?
I don't know, but I remember that it was an important episode.
Yeah. And they was like, this just in. It was like, why do you think, I mean, does
I don't think that the White House thought about that. I mean,
I don't know. It was kind of.
I honestly tell you that I don't think that Obama gave a damn about Donald. I do remember the, national press, that press dinner, the correspondence dinner. I remember going to that, and I remember Barack Obama just straight.
Yeah, he blasted him. I mean, those jokes, hilarious.
I felt bad for Trump when I was sitting there, and I was just a couple of tables away. I felt bad for him. So
I didn't know you were there.
I wrote about it in my #1 bestseller, Unhinged.
Oh, Unhinged. Yes, of course. We got to get to that. So you're at the correspondence dinner. Is this the moment when Trump says, I'm going to run for president now?
There's no question in my mind that was the moment. There is no question, because here is this accomplished African-American man, first Black president, standing on stage, mocking you in front of the entire Washington establishment and the world for that matter. And I saw him when he was leaving. He was ticked. He was hot. And so anyway, fast forward to him calling me, saying he was going to run. And he said, you're one of the few people that I know that worked in the White House and who has political experience. And basically, I need you to come and help me. And at that point, it was such a long shot. I don't know if you remember, but nobody really took it seriously. And it was such a small operation. I think when I came on board, there was probably like 13 people.
So let me ask this. So do you think that, like, does Trump have a genuine hate for Obama, you think?
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that he does. And
because it's like an obsession. He whenever he can't answer a question, I feel like, well, Obama messed this up. That's why, that's why this happened.
You know why it's sad? Because traditionally presidents rely on their predecessors to advise them and give them guidance and stuff. And I think that that's important, that continuum of power and information, institutional knowledge that only few presidents, 45 presidents
45, yeah.
I think that's important. And so the fact that there is such hatred on behalf of Trump, because I don't really think Barack Obama gives a damn about what Trump says or does, because he always takes the high road. But Trump is obsessed, and it's a little scary. Like if Barack Obama could get a restraining order, he probably should, because that's how obsessed Donald Trump is of him.
Wow. So Trump calls you and you make this decision to work in his campaign. Obviously a lot different from Al Gore's campaign, but you're still super famous and popular. So are you thinking, like, is this a career move or is this a popularity thing? Like, what was the motive to support Donald Trump at that time?
Well, at this point, I've been working with Donald for so long that, and that business relationship had been an important one in my development as a person, as a career. Those at that point, 14 years of knowing him and working with him, and so really, I didn't think it was going to go that far. To be honest, I thought I would go to New York and Donald would have one of those kind of press conferences and announce it and use it for some kind of publicity stunt, and then it would be over. And a lot of people thought that. But all the while, I'm thinking, if he does go forward with this, and I'm looking around, and there are no other African Americans in his inner circle. There's no one else but me. When you talked about being the only one sitting around and looking around a room, it was just me. And so as the campaign advanced, and I tried to build, a team around him, of people that could advise him. If, in fact, this man became president, he needed to be informed and educated about the issues that were impacting the Black community. And one of the things I think you can appreciate by your Howard experience is that they teach us not to just go to places that are comfortable, but to be trailblazers and go to places where there is no path and create one. And that was kind of the space that I was operating in, that there was no other African-American woman in that whole stratosphere. And I was armed and equipped with the knowledge of what politics, how politics work, and what politics, what those policies would mean to our community. And so because I had that relationship with him, having worked with him at that point, 14, 15 years, it was just a natural kind of development in terms of my role as an advisor to him on African-American issues. Who better positioned to advise us?
Do you think he took your position, in your opinion, serious?
I think that he knew that he needed to at least get to the 6% of African-American vote that Romney had gotten, or he wasn't going to become president. Like, I think he knew that he had to listen somewhat, or it would be difficult for him to have a path to become president.
So even after allegedly him saying these N-words on The Apprentice, you had no problem supporting him?
Well, if I had that information at that point, then I would have a problem. But
you didn't know at that point.
The first indication about him saying those things from a production member was an interview given by a producer by the name of Bill Pruitt. And it's a very well published interview by NPR, where Bill Pruitt says in 2015, fall of 2015, by this point I'm in, he says, if you think the Access Hollywood tape is bad, then you should hear some of the tapes from production on The Apprentice. Donald Trump said,
yeah, I remember that.
That was the first time. Now, mind you, at this point, I'm on the plane with him. I'm in boardrooms with him. At this point, that was the first time I believe that Kwame, or even myself, had even heard about the fact that production had heard Trump saying these things, because no one at that point had come forward to say those things. And so I remember going to him, and I kind of described this entire scene in my book of confronting Donald Trump one-on-one about.
Oh, so you brought it to his attention.
Oh, I had to step to him. How could I not listening to hearsay or rumors? I had to go directly to him. And I asked him point blank, I said, first of all, I was on that show. The season that Bill worked was our season. That was Kwame and I were the only two Black folks on the show. So he could only be talking about us. And I was hot when I confronted him to hear those rumors after I had put myself out there. And I was so much a part of the Apprentice brand. And in some ways that Trump brand, I mean, I was concerned. So of course I confronted him, and it's a long drawn out story that I share in the book, but you know, he says he didn't, and that these are lies and they're political attacks. And I called Bill Pruitt, and I'm like, you have to tell me if this is true, you know. And he's, I can't talk, you know, all these things. All of a sudden, what he's saying is now, you know.
So what about, so I mean, in the midst of this, of you having this relationship with Trump, your reputation in the Black community, it takes a big hit.
About it. I'm at this point, I'm enjoying the fruits of a great career in Hollywood. I've been working in the community, working on civil rights issues, being an advocate against gun violence in the community, advocating for Black men so that they could be empowered, at-risk youth. I mean, at this point, I had worked so hard to help with issues that were important to me. And I guess I didn't realize that continuing this business relationship, this symbiotic relationship with Donald Trump, was going to impact me so much. I know so many people who have stayed loyal to folks that they have worked with for years and years and years, to their detriment. And I had become that person. And so I've had a chance to reflect on that. And I think that, you know, loyalty was so incredibly important to me. And
how did that feel though, for your, you know, for people to look like you to just be like, you know, because, you know, obviously I run the Howard Alumni Instagram, and I see some of the comments that even to this day people just drop and feel so comfortable just saying about you, you know. So I don't, you know, obviously I don't know you, you know, and much of what I do know about you is from network TV and sound bites here and sound bites there. But everybody's not going to pick up your book and read it. You know, it's a lot easier to go on YouTube. And of course, a lot of times, you know, I think the saying goes like, why mess up a good story with the truth? You know, sometimes it's just easier and better to hit to trash somebody. You know, that's gotta bother you a little bit, or is it? You know,
at that point, when there was just even a semblance of a chance that he was going to win, I was so focused on making sure that if this is going to be the next president of the United States, that he is advised by someone who does come from the inner city, who comes from the streets, who has had these incredible experiences at HBCUs.
but why doesn't Black America like know that about you? Like, why does it, like, why wasn't that so obvious to a lot of us?
Oh God, an impression that I grew up with some kind of silver spoon. When I read that, I'm like, really? Like, really? If you look at the decisions that I've made.
Even learning about your father getting, I was watching some interview with you on, and you like went into like how your father was murdered at 7 and you was from Youngtown. And I was like, I didn't know any of that stuff. And I found myself like watching stuff about you, and like you weren't answering that question. You was like, look, everybody about to learn this about me right now before I answer like any question. And I thought, oh, go ahead.
Joshua, if you're not careful, people start to tell your story for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're mad at the persona that they think they know, but they don't know the true story. And you're absolutely right. I did a great job of telling my own story in my book. It went to #1. It sold tons and tons of copies. But the truth of the matter is, they have said, if you want to hide, you know, the truth from certain people, put it in the book.
I know. They was talking about me. They was talking about me.
I've had to continue to tell my story and help people understand that I've always made decisions that not only advance me, but advance my community. I didn't go to Ohio State when I had an opportunity. I didn't go to Youngstown State when I had an opportunity to play ball. I went to Central State. I went to an HBCU. When I wanted to do my graduate education, I didn't go to Georgetown. I didn't go to American University. I went to Howard. I made decisions that always were with the consciousness of somebody who has not only a heart for our community, but a heart for advancing our community. And so,
because you know what, I'm not gonna lie. Like I talked to 2 people that know you before I did this, and they crossed paths with you, and they were like, "Oh, she's a great business." Like they were saying like positive things. So like I got a friend, you know, I'm not gonna say their name. Like, yeah, ask her. Because I was like, man, what do I say? What do I bring? He was like, man, her HBCU work, bring that up. Bring up prison reform. Like, these are people that I went to college with at Howard, and they was like, bring this up. I'm thinking, I'm like, but then I asked a group of people that don't know you. They like, man, why? Ask her why she a sellout. It's like all these people that they don't know you though. You know what I mean? So it's just interesting being, like the responsibility that the media has and how they can like portray people.
And you,
That's why I like to start the interview off like getting to know you and kind of understanding how you got to the White House and to the Apprentice. Because most people, if they honest with themselves, you making all of that bread, sometimes you're not cognizant of certain things, and then when you like, oh wait, he said what? You know,
well, I think that we also have to remember that a lot of that criticism comes from people who I have had their only experience of me is on YouTube,
mm-hmm.
right? And YouTube will get it. They will never have a conversation like you and I are having, and so they're going to repeat stuff that was put out by a predominant media that does not understand Black women. And I've had to carry that in my career in television, this misunderstanding of how we operate or react. And so when white media tries to tell the story of Omarosa, it's always going to be wrong because they don't know the Black experience. They have no idea what it's like being the only Black woman sitting in the White House and still thinking about the fact that half of Howard's funding comes from the government. And so do I storm out the room during the HBCU meeting and say, oh, they're treating me bad? Or do I stay and take the heat and still get the funds that my school needs? Do I storm out of the housing meeting when there's so many people who do not have access to just basic housing? Do I storm out of the meeting on healthcare when they're trying to dismantle Obamacare? Or I be the only representative for our community at the table? I was taught by people who understood that it was incredibly important to be at the table. Even as people are calling me names and selling my character, I knew that if I left, there was not going to be a replacement. There is no one doing my work, my portfolio in the White House since I've left.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, that is tragic. But the price is so terrible that you pay if you do try to fight in this particular environment that I don't believe that there's anyone that wants to step up to be assistant to the president and advisor on Black issues, because immediately they will destroy you.
Well, yeah, I mean that was an issue when when he was meeting with Kanye and people like Steve Harvey, and people were just flat out refusing to meet with Trump, which is on one end I could say, okay, that's bad for you. The optics just don't look right. But if we want to have representation and he's the president, somebody got to be willing to talk to him, to talk about, what our issues are. So, I can definitely sympathize, where you're coming from. So when you were working with Trump, what did you personally hope to accomplish?
I had a portfolio of 5 major issues that were incredibly important to me. First was faith-based issues. During Bush's administration, there was a thing called faith-based initiatives, which basically gave funding to churches and faith leaders to go into the community and make a difference. So that was one of the things I was very passionate about. Of course, prison reform, gun control, and my passion was HBCUs, getting increased funding, improved opportunities for African Americans studying in those institutions.
And was Trump receptive to any of these?
I mean, he was receptive in the sense that in terms of the funding, if you look at the money, I mean, there was
because I know he did some stuff with prison reform. He gave some more money to HBCUs, and a part of me is like, did he want to do that just to spite Obama? To say, hey, I gave more than Obama did, because he's like, the blacks love me. He say stuff like that.
I think that he was just doing the bare minimum. He would.
Who?
Donald Trump. If
Okay.
I backed enough, then he would kind of give some concessions. Another area that was very important to me was farmers, Black farmers, and making sure that they had the same type of resources that white farmers were getting. And then lastly, small business outreach. That was important to me in terms of funding and entrepreneurial initiatives. And so I worked on a ton of these things during my time, but all while I was doing that, I was also, fighting perceptions and fighting people attacking, and I would do an initiative and people would tear it down or they wouldn't support it. I'm not going to support that. Screw him. I don't care if that policy passes or not. And so that was difficult, but the work was important. It was important enough for me to keep fighting.
So what would you say your biggest accomplishment is under that administration?
Definitely HBCUs and getting year-round funding in terms of Pell Grants for students at historically Black colleges and universities, increase in fundings for institutions like Howard University that relies on federal funding to keep their doors open. But it was interesting because my nephew was going to go to the HBCU here in Jacksonville, and he wanted to go during summer school, and the funding was there. And I was thinking, wow, I can feel my legacy and my hard work even at this level. And so I think some of the foundation for prison reform that I laid, absolutely came to fruition. It was after I left, but the foundation was there. And so the work was necessary. It was important. And even now, as we're in the middle of this global pandemic, this health crisis, you would hope that there was a Black female voice in there that could advise him on the disparities in terms of how this virus is impacting our community. But
do you think that Trump has a genuine care for the Black community?
Trump doesn't have a genuine care for anyone but himself. Black, brown, purple, green, it's all about himself and advancing his own agenda. And so I don't believe that if there's somebody that can help him at that moment, he cares for that moment. That's it. He does not care unless you're helping him in that moment. And after that moment is passed,
how do you think they've handled this pandemic so far?
Well, we have 90,000 Americans who have
passed. Because he called it a hoax,
right?
Initially,
90,000 Americans, 1.3 million people have been infected by this disease. So there's no way to spin this. This has been an absolute disaster for the administration. His handling, his missed opportunity of 2 months of not believing that this virus posed a very imminent threat to our country. I mean, the writing is on the wall. You cannot debate with the numbers because the numbers don't lie.
Right, because in what organization can you be a leader? Like, I have a company, I only got 6 employees. If I would have told them, hey, don't worry, this thing is not real. Everybody lick envelopes every day. If one of them gets sick, I'm going to get sued. I'm going to get fired. I'm going to lose my whole business. He called all of this a hoax and continues to just make up stuff. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It just seems really odd to me. And, that he's able to stay in this position and kind of it just seems like he's winging it. What was it like working under an administration with someone who really had no political experience?
It was, I think that the most...
And no ties to anybody, like, what was that like?
The most frustrating part of the administration is that he could have made such an impact. Like, he was positioned to do some, different things and taking different approaches because he was an outsider. But I believe that he squandered that opportunity to change the trajectory of this country in terms of leadership. He's failed.
Yeah, like those remarks, like in like one of those things. Were you in the administration at the time when he said about Charlottesville? Very fine people on both sides. Were you there when he said that?
Charlottesville. That's when I decided.
as a Black woman, I mean, how did that land on you when he said that?
I remember going in with my briefing because I put this whole briefing on the impact of not only the images of the tiki torches and this and that, but I put this incredible briefing because I had, to advise him. And I went in there and I said, I needed to understand if he understood what he was saying. Do you understand? Like, some people say stuff and you don't know if they're saying it for bravado, or if he felt that in his spirit. And he's like, well, you just don't know. The briefing said, and some of this stuff is in some of the classified stuff, but some of the reports about who was down there and who wasn't was included in that. And said that does not in any way dismiss the fact that you have basically equated both sides of this thing. And there is a young woman who is dead because of these white supremacists and these hate groups, and you have to call it out clearly. And he just, I don't know. I can't say what was in his heart, but I can tell you what was in his face. And it was just pure ignorance. And he is not the person that you would want as in the moment of crisis.
So all this time you had these feelings, and you're in your mind, you're like, I'm doing the work. I'm doing work, but the optics are that you're a sellout. I mean, are you aware? Were you like aware of this that was going on? Like, was your circle like, hey, this is what is going on?
Josh, I wish when I tell you, and I'm not saying this to be funny, when you work in the White House as a senior advisor at the level I was working at, and you're pulling 14, 15 days, I didn't have enough time or energy to worry about what somebody was saying on Instagram about me. You know what I mean? Like, I was barely grabbing a meal and getting sleep because there was crisis after crisis after crisis. And all of those things were in my portfolio. The man thought Frederick Douglass was still alive, for crying out loud. The man was attacking LeBron James. The man was going to Colin Kaepernick. Like, every single day there was a fire to put out. And so when people tell me, oh, people are saying bad things, or this person is attacking you, you know what I said to them? It's not what they call you, it's what you answer to. And I don't answer to those things because I know the importance of the work that I'm doing.
Man, I mean, he's attacking some major figures in the Black community.
Oh, it was one person after the other. It was Jameel Hill. It was it was Maxine Waters. I mean, every single day I was like, I have got to get out of here. I have to get out of this place, and I have to get away from this person. And
how did that affect your personal life? I mean, you're married,
I got married in April, and I barely saw my husband in that first year.
Because your husband's a pastor, right?
Yes, he pastors at the Sanctuary of Mount Calvary here in Jacksonville. And so not only am I a new wife, but I'm a first lady. And so on my free Sundays, I'm getting on a plane flying the 2.5 hours to Jacksonville so I can support my husband, support my church, be a first lady, and do what I was called to do, which is ministry. But there was fire after fire after fire after fire. It was a complete and total nightmare.
How did that feel? I mean, what did you feel lonely at all in the White House?
A loneliness in the sense of what you described when you said you first got to corporate America, and you struggled because sometimes you just want to look to your left and go, did he really say that? Did you, like, is that and you have no one there to have your back or to commiserate with. A loneliness in that sense, because I still had my village that was kind of lifted up, but there was a loneliness in the sense that there was no one else to commiserate with or to discuss these crazy things that were happening or to even just make sense of it.
What do you think the areas are of like Trump that needs the most improvement, like in his inner circle? I mean, right off the bat, he was hiring folks like I forgot, Breitbart or whatever that super right organization is that had like ties to white supremacy. Obviously, Jared Kushner appointing him to stuff. He has, super wealthy, but we know about his past, his father's past, in terms of like what they did with housing. Ben Carson, putting him over hood. Like, what do you think are the um, improvement areas that Trump needs to improve the most in terms of his inner circle?
I think the best improvement that he can do is just leave the White House. I
Hmm.
mean, that's the only step he can make to improve.
I mean, does he have any strengths?
I would say that there's some level of this whole idea that he's Teflon Don. I mean,
Yeah.
to call him in New York, he's been through impeachment. He's been through all these crises. But I think that he has finally put himself in a position where he can't recover from. I mean, he is responsible for 90,000 deaths because of his lack of action, because of his lack of leadership, because of his ability to navigate this country through this crisis.
So basically your support of Trump was not necessarily supporting him. It was the position that you were, like, the impact is what you were trying to achieve. It wasn't, I believe in this man.
After he won, I was weighing my options, and I know how hard it is to be in the White House. I've been there before. I knew the sacrifice you would have. And I knew that there was no one else poised to do it, because
Mm-hmm.
in that inner circle is very, very difficult. And so I think that at this point, as I look back on that experience, I still believe in some way these twists and turns in my life story that just seem so unbelievable. Like you said, a little girl from Youngstown ending up in the White House, not once, but twice. I don't believe that I was there by accident. I believe that there was a call on my life that required me to be in a difficult situation at a difficult time for this country and try to do the best that I could. And that's all that I tried to do, Joshua, was
Mm-hmm.
the
Man. What about those comments that he said on, what was that, Extra, when he was with Billy Bush, I think?
gosh, you're talking about the
The-
Access Hollywood.
yeah, Access Hollywood. Now, was this when, I'm trying to remember. I mean, he has so many sexual harassment allegations. Why do you think he was able to survive that? I mean, if Obama would have said that, I mean, all hell would have broke loose. Why was he able to survive that? Why haven't folks like Bill Cosby been able to survive that? But you
Well, I
have.
don't know that he survived it. Let's be clear. He
Mhm.
currently still has cases that are going forward. There is no guarantee that he, after he leaves office, will not be prosecuted for these sex crimes, that he will not have to pay for those crimes. So let's not assume that he's gotten away with it, because he still has some reckoning for those actions. Let's just say that at this time, those things are on hold, but he will have to come face to face with his these victims. And so we also realize that in this country that white politicians and black politicians are treated differently in terms of what people's expectations are of them and what they can do and what they can get away with.
Well, let's go to something a little bit more positive.
Okay.
Let's talk about some projects you're working on, and also, can you tell me, you know, so answer that question one, and second half to that question is, what is Omarosa's legacy?
Let me deal with the first question, because I'll
Okay.
get to the other one. Thank you for asking about my projects. Prior to COVID, I was working on three major things that I'm very, very passionate about. Of course, the second follow-up to Unhinged, to my successful bestseller, I was publishing that second book. The other thing is an incredible development deal that I have with CBS to bring programming that's important to me. But lastly, my ministry, and I'm not saying lastly in terms of importance, but lastly because it requires a little more time to just say that I know that the call on my life is to share the gospel of Jesus Christ, and I will do that anywhere I can go. In fact, I was training to climb Mount Kilimanjaro And I was so looking forward to going to Africa and doing this and working with Global Access to Cancer Care in the missionary work that I do around the globe. You mentioned that I've lectured at, these places, Oxford and Cambridge and Harvard, but wherever I go, I take Jesus with me. So wherever I am in the world, my ministry is front and center. And so in this post-COVID world, I think it's so important that my voice as a ordained pastor, as a faith leader, is heard so much more in terms of encouraging people and helping people to keep the faith and to remember that no matter what we're going through, that we have to come boldly to the throne of grace because God truly will bring us through this. And so those are the things that I'm working on, but the most important is the work that my husband and I are doing here in Jacksonville at Mount Calvary.
You're a great speaker. Great speaker. And please keep me in tune with what's going on. I run that Howard Alumni Instagram. So anything you want to share, just tag me in it, and I'm happy to share it with the masses.
Liking and commenting on that pretty actively, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, you are. So what about your legacy? 100 years from now, what are folks saying about Omarosa Manigault Newman?
My legacy is simply this. I want, after all is said and done, that people will say that she was a fighter for the kingdom, that she saved souls, that she fed the poor, that she looked after those who had nothing to eat, that she visited those who were in prison, that she looked after the least of these. I could care less about all of the television shows and the movies and the books and that sort of thing, but I do care that when I face my maker, that he looks me in the eye and say, "Well done, thy good and faithful servant."
Very good. So if people want to stay in touch with you or follow your work, Omarosa, how do they do that?
Well, the benefit of having a very unique name is that that name is across all of social media. So on Twitter, I'm at Omarosa. On Instagram, Omarosa. On LinkedIn, Omarosa. On YouTube, Omarosa. On Snapchat, Omarosa. On TikTok, Omarosa. And on Facebook, the one and only Omarosa. And my website is omarosa.com.
Nice. So last thing, we're going to wrap up. It's going to be real quick. I want to do Jeopardy. So let's see what you know about Howard. All right.
Yeah.
Are you ready? Okay, so Jeopardy. So finish this sentence. Reared against the eastern sky.
Reared against the eastern sky. Dear Howard, we sing of thee.
Not quite. Reared against the eastern sky, proudly there on hilltop high. What year was Howard founded? 1867?
Yes.
Got it. Who's the current president of Howard?
Frederick. Dr. Frederick. Wayne Frederick.
Okay. What's the zip code of Howard?
Oh, I know this. 20005.
20059.
Ah!
What is the Black national anthem?
Oh. Lift every voice.
There you go. How many schools and colleges at Howard?
Oh, there are 23 schools and colleges at Howard.
13.
Oh my God.
What is the Howard motto?
Truth and service.
Very good. All right, last one is rapid fire. And when I say these names or words, you have to whatever the first word is that comes to mind, you have to say it. Okay? Is homecoming better as a student or alum?
As an alum.
Pierce Morgan.
Idiot.
CNN or Fox News? Secretly recorded tapes.
I got receipt.
Philanthropy.
Josh Mercer.
HBCUs.
The best educational experience that you can have.
U Street or Adams Morgan?
U Street, Ben's Chili Bowl, Republic Garden.
Okay. You taking it back now. Did you ever go to Love?
Yes, when was it Mark Barnes?
Yeah, Mark Barnes, yeah.
Love, Dream.
Mm-hmm.
All the names a couple of times.
Park, yep. Best Howard moment.
My best Howard moment was walking across, getting my degree and looking at the face of my grandmother and my mother and all my family who drove from Ohio the 8 hours to see me. And it was incredible.
Nice. Jordan or LeBron?
Jordan.
Wow, and you from Ohio.
I know, but he is the greatest.
He is. So that's it, Omarosa. I appreciate you being a guest on the show. When you said yes, I couldn't believe it.
Administration building. Who is he? No. Drew Hall or no? I'm just
true. You didn't stay in any of the dorms though, right?
I did. I told you I stayed at Divinity.
You said Divinity. That's not a real dorm.
Well, I couldn't afford the towers. I was poor.
Nah, don't worry about it. Thank you for joining the HU Movemaker podcast, where we highlight folks that have contributed to the Howard legacy at the highest levels. To hear more interviews or purchase merchandise, please visit www.humovemakers.com.